You're listening to Mad Radio. Mad Radio. Mad Radio. Make a difference.
Quick, me lads! Hoist the rigging!
Aye, Captain!
Splice the main brace!
Aye, Captain!
Batten down the hatches!
Aye, Captain!
I'm going below deck to get the show started. And now, the only man who doesn't float in the Dead Sea, Mr. Leadbottom himself, Brendan McCarty.
Thank you, Petey. Welcome in, all you scallywags, you swashbucklers, landlubbers, hornswogglers, and salty dogs to the Peg Leg Podcast, a show where we delve into the lives of fellow pirates and learn a bit more about the unsung heroes among us all. Arr! This week we travel to the, well, right now it's still the Science, Math, and Engineering. It's going to change over to the School of Science, Engineering, and Math. But we'll get to that in a minute. To speak with an individual who has earned his BS degree in geology with honors from the University of Colorado. He has also earned his master's degree in geology from the University of Montana. His first teaching job was teaching whitewater kayaking in Boulder, Colorado, and we will certainly get into that as well. He taught high school for the first 5 years at Sonora High. He received the Outstanding Earth Science Teacher Award in 2004. He has been teaching earth science courses at MJC full-time since 2005 and just completed a new course on modern climate change, which is Earth Science 163. And again, we will get into that. He's been married for 18 years and helped to raise two wonderful teenage girls. He does like to kayak. He has run the North Stanislaus and Main Tuolumne rivers this summer, both Class 4 whitewater rivers. Please welcome to the poop deck, Noah Hughes.
Thanks a lot, Brandon. I'm very happy to be here. Great intro.
Right on. So, Noah, how did you find your way to MJC?
Well, once I had decided I wanted to teach, I was working as a substitute teacher at Sonora High, actually, and sort of ski bumming. I had my bachelor's degree at that point in time, and I started working on my teaching credential. And as part of one of my assignments, I had to interview somebody who was already in a teaching job. So I interviewed this gentleman up at Sonora High. I think his name was John Hanson. And I just had a bunch of standard interview questions for him just about the job and how he prepared and so on. And then one of the questions I asked, I said, if you had any advice to give to somebody who's in my situation right now, what would it be? And my situation was, I was a substitute teacher, sort of, part-time, and I was working on my teaching credential. And he said, well, the advice that I would give you is, if you think you might want to go back to graduate school, do it now. Don't wait, because once you get a job teaching, those checks start rolling in, right, and they're going to seem kind of big at first to you. They're not that big, but they're going to seem big, and it's going to get really hard to go back to school. It just gets harder and harder. So it'll never be easier than it is right now if you want to go to graduate school. And so I really thought about that, and I thought, I think I do want to do that because maybe I want to teach at a community college. I didn't really know what level I wanted to teach, and I wasn't quite ready to get a job yet. Going to graduate school sounded like a lot of fun. The previous fall, I was on my way back from a road trip to Alaska.
Okay.
And I had stopped into Missoula, Montana to visit some friends of mine who are some kayaking buddies who were in school there. And we visited and we spent the night, and it was kind of fun. And then we were leaving town, and we got about 10 or 15 miles out of town, and the transmission just fell out of my truck. And
dang.
And in Darby, Montana. And so my buddy and I, the guy I was traveling with, we were stuck in Darby, and it was going to take weeks, and I don't need to go into the whole story, but
no parts you could find.
We were literally sleeping on the floor of this guy's garage. His actual garage, this mechanic, had burned down recently, so he was literally working out of a shed on his property. And so myself, my buddy, and my dog were all just basically sleeping around this guy's workshop. He was heating the place with used motor oil and wood. And so anyway, we said, okay, enough of this. Let's hitchhike back up to Missoula and spend the time up there. Let's go bother our friends.
And so what year is this?
Ooh, that's a good question. This would have been fall of 98, I guess. Fall of 98.
And it was okay. It was safe at that point still.
To hitchhike. Yeah.
Okay.
Hitchhiking back then, it's in Montana, in the Bitterroot Valley of Montana, was a relatively safe proposition. So we caught a ride back to Missoula, and we crashed at my friend's house, even though he was still trying to go to school. And anyway, it just happened to be Halloween. Missoula is a great town. We went out. We went to the bars. We went to parties. We just had so much fun in Missoula, and I just remember, and that it just stuck with me. And so when this guy said, "Hey, you might want to think about going back to graduate school," in my head I was like, Missoula, Montana. That's where I want to go. And so part of it was just it sounded fun, and so. Luckily, they had a pretty, they were pretty flexible on their deadlines for application because I was deciding kind of late. And anyway, I ended up going there, and I got my my master's degree in science. I studied a bunch of rocks up in Canada and defended my thesis and was out of there in 2 years. And it was literally the day before I was supposed to defend my master's thesis, I got a phone call from one of the teachers that I used to work for at Sonora High. As a substitute teacher who knew science, who had a science background, you're kind of a unicorn, and so you're really valuable to any high school, really, or any school.
Right.
And so they really liked me when I was working at Sonora High, and I got to know a lot of the science teachers there. And so when they had a position open up, they called me and said, "We really want you to apply for this position," And so that was great. So I literally defended my thesis. I didn't even get to enjoy the graduation ceremony because I had to jump in my car and drive back to be there for the interview for that job. And so anyway, I got the job, ended up teaching at Sonora High School. I taught there for 5 years. During that time, I met my future wife. We got married. We bought a home, and we were pretty settled in there. Things were pretty good. I was just kind of finding my groove teaching high school. It's not easy, man. It takes a few years to really get your feet under you. And but boy, you really learn to teach in high school. It's kind of trial by fire. And then this job becomes available at MJC. And as we'll get to in the next question, my family still lived here. My wife's family was here. So I applied. To my surprise, I got the job. And I actually commuted for a couple of years from Sonora down to Modesto before we finally decided to move back.
That's when gas was cheap.
Yes, it was cheaper than it is today. That's for sure. Cheaper than it is today. And but even that drove me crazy. And so it just wasn't sustainable, I guess you could say. And we had kids. We had a couple of young kids. We needed some help. The grandparents were in Modesto.
Sure.
I got this job in Modesto. And to tell you the truth, teaching at a community college after teaching at a high school is sort of like going from a bumpy, washboarded dirt road and hitting a smooth stretch of highway.
Oh, man.
It really is. So anyway, yeah, that's how I ended up at MJC. Yeah.
Right on. So then where did you grow up then? Was it in this area?
Yeah. So I grew up in Riverbank.
Okay. City of Action.
The City of Action, just north of town, just north of Modesto. I did end up going to school in Modesto. I went to I kind of bounced between some private schools and some public schools. I went to Milne's School, which is kind of out in the country, out there on Milne's Road, for like kindergarten through 4th grade. Then I went to Our Lady of Fatima, for a Catholic school for 2 years. Didn't work out that great, and so I ended up going to Somerset Junior High, and I was all set to go to Bayer, but then I ran into some of my old buddies from Fatima, and they sort of talked me into going to Central, so I ended up going to Central Catholic, And I went there for 3 years. Didn't quite finish there either, although I did enjoy my time there. I ended up finishing up high school in Colorado. I wanted to go to Colorado so bad. When I was in high school, the Colorado Buffaloes were the football team. I mean, they were right. I think they won a national championship. Technically, they sort of shared it. It was kind of a controversy at the time. But anyway, they were on TV a lot.
Okay.
And so I would watch these football games at this beautiful campus, And so anyway, that's how I ended up. I just really wanted to go to Colorado. And so I actually went there even before I graduated high school, and finished high school there.
How did you get there? What was well, that's probably another story, but it's like...
kind of. It's a story of a little bit of privilege and so on. My parents were just super cool about it. And I applied to a couple of colleges that will do sort of an early admissions thing, but I decided I wasn't really ready for college, so I ended up going to a boarding school for 1 year.
Okay.
For 1 year in outside of Colorado Springs. And that was kind of cool because I learned, they had this really cool outdoor program. I learned to rock climb and just sort of generally mountaineering and stuff like that. I really got into that stuff when I was out there. So that was one of the reasons why I wanted to go to that school. So anyway, I was there for just a year, and then I got accepted to the University of Colorado and moved up there. My brother was already going there, so I just followed my brother there.
Well-rounded for sure. What are some of your hobbies outside of work?
Okay, so I guess we touched on the whitewater stuff a little bit earlier. So I mentioned that I sort of got into climbing when I was out in Colorado. I did that for a couple of years, but then found that I was just terrified. I was really scared the shit out of me. And so I ended up not really pursuing that. And at the time, I met this girl who was into kayaking. Her family was into kayaking. She's from Modesto. Her dad's a famous kayaker and climber in Modesto, Roy Robbins.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I kind of became really good friends with that family, and so I learned to kayak from Royal and his daughter.
That's just stop right there, because that's amazing in and of itself. I know that when he wasn't able to kind of a backstory, I guess, on him is that when he finally wasn't able to do what he loved the most, that's kind of what he went into, right?
Yeah,
was the whitewater.
Yeah, exactly. He, man, that guy just was addicted to adventure.
Yes.
And so he, after a while, he couldn't climb anymore, but he could kayak.
Right.
Something about some arthritis or something. And so anyway, yeah. And so that was great. I just, and so I just stuck with it. I just kept kayaking. I got a job teaching kayaking, and I've still managed to kind of keep doing it to this day.
Now you said Cat 4, so kind of if you would go over the Cat system for those who aren't privy to that.
So the rating system for whitewater, it's changed over the years. It used to be Class 1 through Class 5.
Okay.
Class 1 is basically flat moving water like you might see on the rivers flowing through Modesto, right? The Tuolumne, where you got moving water. There's no white water per se, but it's moving.
Right.
That's Class 1. Class 2, riffles, some waves. Class 3, riffles with a few obstacles to avoid. Class 4 is harder obstacles to avoid, maybe with some higher consequences. And then Class 5 is hard to define, but I think a good definition of Class 5 is where 90% of the water goes where you cannot go.
Okay. And speed has something to do with this as well, right? The
velocity
of how fast the river is flowing.
It's not so much speed, because what really hard rivers are very turbulent. There's a lot of water flowing back on itself. And so it's not necessarily about speed, although power is certainly part of it. But it's more about the gradient, which is how many feet per mile the river is dropping on its way to the ocean.
Okay.
Right. And so a river that's dropping 60 to 80 feet per mile might be a Class 3 run. A river that's dropping over 100 feet per mile might be Class 4, and then 200 feet per mile might be class 5. Although it really varies. How much water is coming down the river plays a big part of that as well.
Any other hobbies that you have been a part of outside of work? Or?
Well, I also really like skiing. So the water cycle in general, I'm pretty into.
High altitude skiing, way up high, or
I like snow skiing. Not necessarily, I go up to Bear Valley a lot. We bought a little cabin up there in 2016, a little A-frame built in 1967, and that's just been great because just a great way to spend time with your family. And I do a little bit of backcountry skiing as well, although I wouldn't consider myself some kind of expert.
Is this cross country skiing, or
it's sort of like that? In the kind of backcountry skiing that I do, you have these special bindings on your skis that allow your heels to come up, sort of like cross country skis. And you have some special boots that flex in different ways, and then you basically take your downhill skis and you put these skins on the bottom of them. They're all these little rolled up. It's like rolled up fabric. And it's sort of like seal skin, where it's smooth in one direction, but it won't rub in the other direction. So it allows you to slide forward and then not slide back. So you can basically walk uphill, sort of like you're in snowshoes, but you're on your skis. So you walk up to the top of whatever you want to ski, and then you remove the skins off your skis. You click your heels back down into those special bindings. You click your boots back into downhill mode, and you're just like you'd be at a ski mountain.
Wow.
So I do like to do that as well. And you know what I also really like is wiffle ball.
Wiffle ball.
Yeah.
You have wiffle ball tournaments or something, or
in my dreams, yes, there are wiffle ball tournaments for sure. If you ever get a chance, look up Major League Wiffle Ball on YouTube and watch some of the games that these guys have. I would love to be a part of something like that. I think that my wiffle ball prime though has passed me up. These days, I just basically love to strike out my children and the children of my friends. I actually do have a little, for Father's Day last year, my wife bought me kind of a target, like you'd see, like a kid might have in the backyard to throw against, the ball will kind of bounce back at you. But I just go back there whenever I need to kind of just sort of unwind, relax, clear my mind. I have a whole bucket of wiffle balls, and I'll just go back there and just throw. And
it's the standard bat. It's the yellow thin.
Yeah, the thin yellow bat. Yep, exactly. When I was growing up, junior high and even into high school, I'm embarrassed to say, we played a ton of wiffle ball, my buddies and I, in the vacant lot next to my house. And so it has a very special place in my heart. I think that wiffle balls and wiffle bats are perhaps the best use of plastic that's ever been invented so far. I mean, heart stents are pretty good too, but wiffle balls and wiffle ball bats are up there as well.
Part of sustainability, right there, right? They last forever.
That's right. That's right. I'll be sure to recycle all those wiffle balls. The wiffle ball recycling facility.
What is something that you pride yourself in?
That's one that I guess I struggle with a little bit. Just because pride's a slippery slope, right?
Right.
So if you take that question just sort of literally, it's kind of like, oh. But, I know the spirit that it's intended in, and I think really what I pride myself in the most these days, I think, after thinking about it a while, is my family. For sure, I've been married 18 years, and I have 2 wonderful daughters, and they really are, they're great kids. I have a great dog I'm kind of proud of as well. And so, yeah, I think that's probably so far is sort of what I would say I'm kind of proud of. I mean, there's definitely some river trips that I've done that I'm happy I survived. So that borders on pride, I suppose, some of those accomplishments back when I was younger, especially. And, and I suppose I'm proud of the job I'm able to do teaching. sometimes. It's really nice when you get that feedback from some students, especially somebody that you haven't seen in a few years, and then they come back and they tell you about how successful they are or how you just changed their life or whatever, and, maybe they're just BSing you, but either way, it's hard not to feel a little pride there too.
And I know I'm going to get some crap if I don't ask you what kind of a dog you have.
I have an old golden retriever.
Okay.
Yep. She's 11 now. Is that right? No. Yeah, she's 11 now. And named Cora, and she helped me raise my kids, basically.
Right on. What motivates you?
I suppose getting back to MJC, since this is the Peg Leg podcast, my motivation for teaching, and I tell my students this, it's really three fundamental reasons why I'm really motivated to teach. The first one, and I teach earth science, right? So I teach geology, oceanography, meteorology, climatology, so atmosphere, weather, oceans and rocks and mountains and rivers. And it's basically earth science, right? And we're all stuck here on Earth. And so I'm really motivated by the fact that the more you learn about something, anything, the more enjoyable it is. For example, if somebody doesn't understand baseball, watching a baseball game is probably really boring.
Right.
And the more you know about the game, the more you can enjoy baseball. To the point where if you really know the game and you know what the pitcher's thinking on a 2-2 count when he's already thrown, 2 outside sliders to this guy, and now he's, that kind of, when you understand things to that level, it just makes it more enjoyable. So if I can share a little bit of that knowledge with students so they can enjoy this place where they're living for the rest of their life, this earth, I think that's cool. I help people be happy, maybe, right? So they can see a cloud and not just be like, oh, there's a pretty cloud, but, oh, hey, there's some air that's rising and expanding and cooling and condensing, and it's a vital part of the water cycle, and that keeps us alive on the earth. Like when your level of understanding is that deep, you get more out of that cloud. And so, and you get more out everywhere you look in the natural world. So that's one thing that motivates me. I suppose the other one is that, the more knowledgeable people are about the earth and its resources and its hazards and so on, the better decisions they can make as consumers and voters and so on. And so that motivates me as well. And then third, to be honest, is just trying to promote sort of a healthy economy. In my class, I focus on writing a decent amount for a science class, and because that's a skill that's really going to help students find a job, get a job, keep a job, and that motivates me as well. I really want to promote I want to help students meet their goals, and I want to promote a healthy tax base here in our community.
Right. Yeah. What are we going to have if we don't have?
Right. Exactly. So so those are kind of my motivations that I lean on from time to time.
Love where you live. Put that on a bumper sticker. I'm sure that it already is. What do you like about the MJC community?
I've been recently involved in this process, this kind of assessment of where our college is at with respect to sustainability, in the broadest sense of the term, sustainability. And it's been a really cool experience because I've gotten a chance to meet a lot of folks outside of my department and my area, a lot of folks, a lot of classified employees and a lot of administrative folks. And so what I've really enjoyed the most is just everybody's kind of passionate, and they share this sense of mission that somehow, our college has this mission to make our community better. And everybody seems to share that at MJC. And I knew that a lot of my teaching colleagues shared that. And by the way, I want to mention that I do think that there are some great teachers at the college, and that's really something that I love about that community as well. But more than that, they're just, what I learned in this process is just that there are so many good things happening at our college that are kind of under the radar. They're happening sort of individuals or small groups of people. They're not necessarily things that are going to be on the college website and stuff, but people are doing a lot of good stuff at that campus. And again, sort of like, flying, under the treetops, so to speak, and making really good stuff happen. And so I think that's what I really like about MJC, is just that sense of mission around making our community better.
Where are some of your favorite places to eat?
Yeah, I got to mention Camp 4. I enjoy eating there, but also because my buddy Damon will probably be mad at me if I didn't mention that. But it really is one of the nicer and more unique places where you can learn a little bit about the history of our area as well. So anyway, I really enjoy going there. The Bauhaus, where actually
Right.
I ran into you
That's
and your
correct.
wife a few years back. So I know that you know about that place too. And, every now and then to just go there with my wife, just the two of us, and and just kind of nosh on some of that stuff that Ty kicks out of that kitchen. It's, he really throws out some great unique flavors out of that kitchen.
And he only uses a toaster oven.
Right. It's
Right.
amazing. And you can
Right.
sit there at the bar and watch him do all this stuff. It's a pretty amazing place. So I really enjoy that too. And let's see, where else have I had a good meal? There's an Italian place now way out in Northeast Modesto, Claus and Sylvan.
Okay.
There's a restaurant. It's called like Gusto Italiano or something like that. It's a little pricey, but the food is exquisite. Really, really, really good. Like sort of Italian countryside kind of stuff. And anyway, I highly recommend that too, if you got the scratch.
Well, that's I'll have to check that place out. I've never heard of it. I'll have to find my way out there.
Mm-hmm. It's very good. They've got this some kind of pasta, but they have like a wild boar sort of meat sauce in there. It's fabulous. I recommend it.
Tell us a funny story or experience you have, either professionally or personally.
Well, I suppose I don't know how funny this story is, but I guess I'll it's the one that kind of pops into my mind. When I was a kid, my mom took classes at MJC, and she took an astronomy class at MJC. The instructor was this guy named Bill Lubke, and so I just remembered that name. For some reason, that name stuck in my head. Maybe it was because one of the first times I ever looked through a telescope was at one of her, as part of her class, they were out, looking through telescopes. And so Professor Bill Lubke was one of the first guys to show me a telescope, and allow me to look through it. And I'd never seen the moon through a telescope before. It just blew my mind.
Right.
And so it's just a memory that I have. It was out on the grass on East Campus. I remember it really well, like right by where the old science building used to be. I shared the story earlier about, kind of how I ended up at MJC. When I was interviewing for the job, who's on my hiring committee but Bill Lubke. And so I thought that was really cool. And so, I ended up getting the job, and now I'm the guy that gets to go up on the roof with the telescopes and show it to all these kids, on the first Friday of every month, and as part of the Great Valley Museum Science Night, which everybody should check out. And I just love the circularity of that story. Like I said, I don't know if it's really funny at all, but it's just really, really cool. And I think about that a lot when I'm up there doing that, because it really is one of my favorite parts of what I get to do at MJC is those free public telescope viewing when you show somebody the moon or Saturn or Jupiter and they've never seen it through a telescope. You can just see their mind expand like right there in front of you. It's really, really cool. I've had people break down in tears because they've never seen the moon through a telescope, and it's so beautiful. And it's just a really cool experience. So I guess that's my story I'd like to share.
Wow. So now you're going to have to pay it forward at some point, right? And you'll have to find the next person.
I suppose so. It could be any of these kids I see on these nights.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Who has been your biggest influence
My biggest influence, I guess I'll keep it sort of, professionally. So when I was in graduate school and I decided that I really did want to teach, and teaching at a community college started to sound pretty good to me, I knew I wanted to go back to California because that was my home. And people in Montana don't like Californians too much anyway up there. Even 20 years ago, it wasn't that popular. And if you go up there now, it's even a little more. And so anyway, so I was excited to move back to California as a whitewater kayaker. A lot of people don't know this, but California is one of the best places in the world for that. And so I was really excited to move back to California. I was thinking about teaching at a community college, and one of my favorite places in the world is the Stanislaus River, and so I knew about Columbia College, and so I said, well, who's got my job then? Who's teaching earth science at Columbia College? And so I looked it up, and it's this guy named Jeff Tolhurst. So I sent him an email, and I said, hey, you've got the job I'd like to have. So, how did you get it? What do I need to do? Just ask him a couple of general questions about it through an email. And he replied back with this email that was like 3 pages long about all these details about how great the job is and the job prospects and how we need, all these earth scientists. And he invited me that when I was home for winter break to come visit him. So I made a point of doing that, and we sat down, we really talked, and we just kind of got along. And he said, hey, well, if you want to teach, how about this summer, you can teach one summer class for me. And so even before I started teaching at Sonora High, I taught one summer course, just a regular earth science course up at Columbia College. And I did that for a couple of summers. And I just got to know Jeff, and he's so passionate about teaching. You'll never meet any. He just retired, by the way, this last year, and so because he's taught up at Columbia College that whole time, but he had a huge influence just on my thinking about teaching, and he gave me my first opportunity. I feel like I owe my career to this guy, both in terms of just aspiring to be as good of a teacher as him, but also the fact that he gave me my first chance as well. So I really look up to that guy.
That's awesome. That's I mean, you couldn't ask for a better story. Jeez. If you had a free plane ticket to anywhere in the world, where would you go and why?
There are so many places I would like to go. But you know what? I've got to say that the one place that I'm just really obsessed with, or not really obsessed with, but where I guess I would like to go would be New Zealand.
Okay.
Kamchatka Peninsula would be a close second, which is part of Russia. But yeah, New Zealand I think would be a really, really cool place to check out. There's great whitewater rivers there, and the wildlife and just the natural beauty of that place just looks spectacular. I mean, they filmed Lord of the Rings there, right? So
yeah,
what more do you need to say?
Can't be, exactly. I'm curious about Russia, though. That sounds interesting as well.
Yeah, the Kamchatka Peninsula of Russia is not too far from Alaska. As a matter of fact, it'd probably be a good time to go annex it right now, like while Russia's busy over in the Ukraine. Maybe we can just go ahead and annex a little part of Russia. It's not too far from.
It's not islands. It's actually
it's a peninsula. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
There's not much up there. There is a little town that has this really, really long name that people just call PK, but it's got huge volcanoes and that look amazing to ski, and really pristine rivers with amazing runs of salmon running up them. I've heard scientists say that it's the best example of what some of the salmon runs in the Pacific Northwest of the United States were probably like, before, pre-Columbian, say.
Wow.
Pre-Columbus. So it's supposed to and so I've spent a lot of time looking at pictures of that landscape and, Google Earth, and, I've already got lines picked out on volcanoes that I want to ski. I've got rivers. I already know some of the lines through some of the rapids that I'd like to go out there. And it's largely unexplored. It's just unexploited, I guess I'd like to say. That's one of my big hesitations to travel anywhere.
Unspoiled.
Yeah, I don't want to go somewhere and feel like I'm a part of a problem. You know, sometimes when you go to travel places and you're a tourist, yeah, you might be helping their economy, but sometimes, you know, that creates problems in places. And so I'm very probably overly sensitive to that when I travel. And so and that's led me to travel to some places that really probably weren't great choices. They're a little too far off the beaten path. I could tell you some stories about Honduras and stuff. But anyway, Kamchatka would be one of those places. I'd probably go get myself in trouble. I'd probably get eaten by a grizzly bear or something in the first week. But anyway, it'd be fun trying.
If you had only 3 albums that you could listen to for the rest of your life, which 3 albums would you choose and why?
Physical Graffiti by Led Zeppelin.
Okay. Why is that?
Just because, well, first off, it's a 2-record LP. It's a double set, so so I'm cheating a little bit, right? So it's got a lot of songs on it, but I'm a big fan of rock and roll. And so I think that Led Zeppelin is one of the highest expressions of rock and roll that's ever been done, and so and that's one of their best albums, and so it just kicks ass, and so that would be one of them for sure. I think another album, kind of for the same reasons too, would be Till the Medicine Takes by Widespread Panic. Widespread Panic. I'm a big spread head.
Okay.
And that's a band out of Athens, Georgia, that's been around a long time. And I've had a chance to see them live several times. When I was in college, I was super into them. And that album, I think, came out right around 2000. And it's just got a nice diversity of different sounds. I really like Widespread Panic because, again, they're just a kick-ass rock and roll band, but at the same time they also have just really great lyrics, very sometimes thoughtful, sometimes poetic, sometimes just hilarious lyrics. And I'm a lyric guy. Like, I listen to lyrics. It makes that counts for me when I'm listening to music. And so I think for my third album, and again, going back to lyrics, if I only had 3 albums to listen to and I had Led Zeppelin and Widespread Panic, I'd have to balance out that masculine energy a little bit with some feminine energy. And I think that maybe Blue by Joni Mitchell.
Okay.
Would probably be my third album, just because it's just a perfect album. She's just such an amazing musician, a guitar player, pianist, and of course her vocals are just unparalleled. And that particular album is just so well. The songwriting is so good on it that I think that, again, if I only had 3 albums to listen to, now again, these aren't my 3 favorite albums necessarily. They're up there for sure. But again, the question was, if I had 3 to listen to the rest of my life, then mixing it up would be an important part of that. And so I think I'd have Joni in there for sure.
Well, so we're at the end of the questions, and so this one, you can go ahead and embellish as much as you'd like, or not embellish, but kind of give us your thoughts on it. But do you have any parting words of encouragement?
I suppose I'll say something that is some advice that I try to give my students on the last day of class, if I remember, because I think that when I teach my earth science class, we do focus a lot on sustainability, and not all the news is cheerful, and sometimes things can be a little scary, I guess, when it comes to our existence on this planet, and we only have a certain amount of resources available to us, and we all have to share the air and the water, and sometimes we don't do a great job of it, and so sometimes it looks a little depressing, and students want to know what they can do. They want to feel a sense of they might want to feel a sense of power when they're feeling powerless. And so my advice to them is to define yourself not by what you consume, but rather by what you produce. And if you can do that, you will certainly reduce your impact on the planet, since most of the impact is related to consumption. But also, you're going to be a happier person. It's not so much about the kind of car you drive, or the sound your car makes when you drive it, or the kind of music you buy and listen to, or the kind of food that you like to eat, or all that stuff. That's the clothes you wear, right? That's other people's stuff. You're just consuming it, right? And if you define yourself by that, it might leave you feeling a little empty. But if instead you define yourself by what you produce, and whatever that might be, it might be poems you write, or people you help, or students you teach, or families, children that you raise, fences you build, whatever it is, define yourself by that. And you'll probably tread a little lighter on the earth, but more than that, you'll be happier, because it's really easy to get on this treadmill out there of more, right? Like if you define yourself by what you consume, you end up just wanting more and more and more. And no matter how much you get, and this is the secret, if you get richer and you double your wealth, then you'll end up just comparing yourself to the other wealthy people that you now know, and it's a treadmill, and it leads to other problems. And so if you want to tread lightly and you want to try to be happy, then I think that, again, defining yourself not by what you consume but by what you produce is a good rule of thumb.
Wow. We'll let those words ring in the air for a little bit there. And I'm sure that
as I consume this beer.
That's right. Well, Noah, thank you so much for being on the podcast, for sharing, and for certainly those words of encouragement. I think that certainly does ring true, and hopefully some people will take that to heart.
Thanks for inviting me, Brandon. This is a lot of fun.
Well, the winds are picking up and the barnacles are collecting on the bow. Time for us to set sail, me hearties. This episode was brought to you by Lots of Rum, produced by yours truly, and edited by Patchy the Parrot. Thanks, Patchy. Music by the Bermuda Triangle Band. Love those guys. Remember, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, or you want to tell me to take a long walk off a short pier, you can email peglegpodcast@gmail.com. Hey, remember to keep your booty close and your sword sharp, lest you find yourself swapping the deck on the bottom of Davy Jones's locker. Until we meet again.